The Heart of It.
Roy West kicking in towards the centre.
A distinctly Tasmanian conversation.
I can feel what it will be like when Tassie plays his first game, and I just...
Lynch gathers, he's got loose men everywhere, but he decides to have a pump shot, and it's an absolute ripper! 200 goals for Peter Hudson. What a fantastic effort.
How did he do that? Bear kick finishes off in style.
Up towards half forward, Stewart flying over the top. Oh, pulled in a beautiful mark.
Well done from Scott. After all, Shredder's got the first goal. Has it gone?
Nichols has had the big ruck with it. Oh! Close
Welcome to The Heart of It. I'm Alistair Nicholson. Today, a highly talented multi-sport athlete who is a champion swimmer shared the pool with Olympic golden girl Ariarne Titmus. Nicole Bresnahan's rise to the ranks of the AFLW came both rapidly and unexpectedly. At the age of 19, friends coaxed her down to Clarence training as a fill-in. A couple of years later, she was playing in North Melbourne's first ever AFLW match in front of a bumper crowd at North Hobart Oval. Last year, it was a grand final. As she readies for her 50th game with the Roos, Bresnahan is also working full-time for AFL Tasmania, helping develop the state's next batch of elite players. This is Nicole Bresnehan's Tasmanian footy story.
Yes, I was born and bred Hobart, 7 Mile Beach to be exact, which is beautiful location. I mean, real coastal kind of town area. Probably only a couple of hundred people live there. But yeah, beach is beautiful. I think the one thing that I speak to a lot of people over here in Melbourne about is just the amount of mornings you can walk down at the beach there and there could be not a person in sight, and you have the whole beach to yourself, which is pretty incredible.
Let me guess, do you get the predictable, oh, it's too cold to go to the beach in Tassie?
Yeah, I do a lot, but nearly all the time you can guarantee that there's someone down there swimming. So yeah, that definitely beats that. I think it's cold, but we're pretty brave and tough Tasmanians, aren't we?
I always find it funny though, because I mean, as I'm talking to you, it's absolutely freezing, it's windy, we're in Melbourne. I don't think the climate here is very much different to Tassie, is it?
No, not at all. I think, it rains down in Tassie, it's probably raining over here in Melbourne. So I never really quite understand that. And obviously I think, all the mainlanders like to lay on us a little bit about the weather, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I think one thing that people seem to love is that it actually snows, which you don't really get many other places. That you can drive up to the mountain. We've been down there for footy camp a fair few times, and the girls think that that's pretty incredible, so which is good. Yeah,
it's a beautiful backdrop to Hobart. What did a young Nicole Bresnahan get up to in 7 Mile Beach?
Very sporty, very, very sporty. I think, the kind of memories, I guess, of my childhood back there would just be both my parents kind of running, my two brothers and I around to all different kinds of sports. So didn't actually spend a real lot of time at home. So between school and then, athletics, dancing, basketball, swimming, no footy at that time for me, but footy for both my brothers. So definitely on the go a lot, which was really good. I don't know how my parents did it, to be honest, but they did well.
So what was your passion, would you say, out of those activities when you were young?
Basketball and swimming for me were huge. Did a lot of athletics when I was growing up quite young. I think that was just a bit more through school. But yeah, a lot of my weekends were spent basketball camps, and a lot of weeks were spent in the pool. So very, very different to kind of what I'm doing now. But I think, those two sports, I can look back and think I've made some, really lifelong friends in both of those sports, and friends that I'm still, really close with today as well, which is pretty awesome.
I bet you picked up a few things in terms of fitness, basketball with your ball handling that probably transitioned quite successfully into football as well. Just sticking with those, so who did you play basketball for, and what sort of level were you playing?
So with basketball, I played with Grenadiers most of my life, Dominoes a little bit as well, but a lot of school basketball. probably between the ages of around 10 to 15, 16. Was fortunate enough to be on a couple of national teams as well. We flew to Perth, had a few comps down in Tassie as well. Kingborough Sports Centre was the main go there. But I think, I'm really fortunate, I think, in terms of sporting at a young age, being able to travel a lot, on a lot of camps, a lot of competitions, which was pretty unreal. But then the swimming side of things, I suppose, the huge kind of, thing that people said most, that not many transferable skills in terms of swimming and football, but which they are right to a degree. But I think, the endurance, and the main thing for me, I think it's the motivation, the commitment of being now an elite athlete. I think swimming really taught me that, and having to be in the pool or waking up at 4:30 of a morning, going and training in the pool, being in the pool by 5:15, and then heading to school and then back at it again that afternoon. It's a huge level of commitment and dedication, and it can be quite a lonely sport at times. So I think that in itself taught me a lot in terms of those skills.
So were you heading into the Clarence bubble back in the day?
I did. I never really got to go there, I suppose, when it was called the bubble per se, but no, I did swim quite a long time at the Clarence pool, and then moved up to the collegiate pool there as well. So both, I swam with two different clubs, one in Sandy Bay, which I spent most of my swimming career at, and then finished off at Hutchinson Collegiate as well, which was a little bit closer to Guildford, where I went to school at in those later swimming days. But it's chasing that black line. I think got a little bit of PTSD of that chlorinated smell when I walk into a local swimming pool. But in saying that, I haven't actually got back in the pool for nearly since I suppose you could call it retired when you're 17, 18. But I haven't really got back in the pool to swim casually very much. But something that I'll probably maybe do in the next couple of years.
So you talk about those early starts. Were you highly motivated, or were there days when you got up and you just, I just cannot get out of bed for this today?
There were a couple that I did struggle, especially when it was cold in the depths of winter there. But I think once I'm up, I wouldn't say I'm a massive morning person, but once I'm up, I'm up. So and I think when you've got an alarm set for 4:30, you're not really functioning or really thinking about too much then. So I was kind of just in a routine over time. But I think it did take a lot of discipline to get up, and I was packing a pre-breakfast, a breakfast, lunch, snacks, all that throughout the day, because I knew I wouldn't be home until 7, 8 o'clock that night. So I had obviously great support in my family as well. At that stage, I didn't have my license, so it was mum or dad waking up at that time as well, dropping me off, picking me up, and then that same in the evening.
What stroke did you specialise in, and how high did you get with it?
I'm not sure if I chose this stroke or it just kind of came about, but it was butterfly, which I don't know, if I had my time again, I'd maybe choose a slightly easier one like freestyle. But butterfly was my stroke at the time, the 50, 100 metre. Did do a little bit of the 200 metre fly, but used to try and kind of avoid those ones because the lactic acid build up in those is not fun. But really enjoyed kind of all strokes, but mainly butterfly.
And you went to the Nationals? Did you do any good at the Nationals?
I might have made a final in the National 100 fly, but was able to travel, Adelaide, Melbourne a lot, kind of really every state across Australia with swimming, with state swimming squads. So that was pretty incredible. I remember there was one event, one school sports, I think Australia comp, where I went for athletics and swimming. So I finished my race in the pool, and dad kind of drove me straight over to the athletics track, and I think I ran in the 4x1 relay, so which is pretty crazy, hair still wet from the pool. So to think of it, that probably was my childhood in a nutshell. Like I tried to fit as much in as possible and tried to do as much as I could up until probably around that 15, 16 age group, where I had to really pick which sport I probably wanted to do at that stage. And obviously for a 15, 16-year-old, that's quite hard when you want to do them all. And eventually it was swimming that I picked, and obviously doing 8 to 9 pool sessions and a couple of kind of what we call out of water sessions as well. it did take up a lot of time.
Yeah, I can imagine. As we chat here, we're only days out from the start of the Paris Olympic Games, where Ariarne Titmus is defending gold medals in freestyle events. You came across her in the pool, didn't you, back in the day?
Yeah, I did, and I don't know whether I should call that as a claim to fame, but I think, you know, she's an incredible athlete and an incredible person to watch, and just hearing her story as well. I mean, growing up, you know, in a small town of Launceston and where she is today is just so incredible, the determination and hard work that she's obviously done to get to where she is. So I think anyone from you know, little Tassie can be watching thinking that's quite incredible. But I think, you know, having, you know, someone like her racing against her at the time, you know, she wasn't a crazy big name. So to see that, you know, I suppose everything she's put in from then until now, she's hasn't got there on, you know, sheer talent, and she's got there on determination and work ethic, and that is pretty incredible to see as well.
Yeah, it's amazing, awesome to see a Tasmanian do so well in the pool, because we haven't traditionally produced a lot of absolute world-class swimmers over the years from down there. It tends to be Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, those kind of states. When did you first pick up a footy then?
Well, it was later than most. I mean, we see, you know, young girls coming through now that have got such good skills at 7, 8, 9 years old, so which is really incredible. But I first picked up a footy when I was 19, so wow. Yeah, quite late when I say late. But yeah, I had a really probably unconventional start to football. Early days, my probably experience with footy and AFL was either watching my brothers play, maybe watching an AFL game when Hawthorn played up at York Park there, or, you know, going to the footy with some friends and dressing up and kind of, you know, being there to watch local friends play local footy. So, you know, when I had a friend that reached out and said I'd finished kind of swimming at this stage, just wanted to have a break from sport altogether. I think, you know, at the time then I was really probably struggling with not enjoying swimming and it being such a big part of my life. I think at the time found it really hard to then go from so many hours of training to then doing really nothing at the time. So I think, you know, I was really looking out for something that I could do. I still had that competitive beast in me that hadn't been tamed. So I was after, you know, something more, and a friend that I used to work with said, you know, I'm going to go to a couple of local footy training sessions. Do you want to come? And my first initial reaction was, hell no. Like, I was like, I can't do that. I can't kick. I can't, you know, I don't know how to play. And that was really scary for me, I think. You know, as an athlete or as someone that, you know, is competitive, you don't really like failure or not being the best at something at the time as well. And I knew I'd be going into that environment, and I, you know, definitely wouldn't know really what to do, and that's kind of scared me, I think, a little bit, if I really think about why I kind of initially didn't want to go and train. But eventually they said, oh, we're really low on numbers, like, you know, can you come along and just have a run around, have a kick? And so I went along, and I remember kind of my very first session, Gilston Bay, like the lights were like candles at the outside of the oval. Like, it was pretty dark. There was about 12 girls there, and you know, we were doing something like off the fence kind of stuff, ground balls, kicking, and tackling came up, and I had a look at, you know, it was tackle after tackle, and I thought, there's no way I'm doing that. I can't get tackled like that. And I was kind of shuffling to the back of the line, shuffling back, and eventually I was like, geez, I'm just gonna have to do this. So I don't know if you know Madison Smith at the time, who former Clarence teammate, and played a little bit at North Melbourne at the time with her as well. And she was the one that was going to tackle me, and she absolutely crunched me. And I was thinking, there was my welcome to football. So, and I loved it. Got back up and thought, you know what, I'm going to tackle. I'll do it to you now too. So, and I absolutely loved it. I really surprised myself, and skills were shocking. Like, couldn't kick, couldn't handball. All I did was run, and that's probably had a bit of an endurance base. But absolutely loved the game, and I think for the first time in a couple of years, I really started to love sport again and love being a part of a team. And I think when I explain or talk about footy, you know, it's great to, you know, be in an AFLW list, at least play, you know, games in front of big crowds on really unreal venues and really grateful for that. But I think when I really strip it right back, it's, you know, when I did start at the Clarence Footy Club with those bunch of girls, I think it was just, you know, such a welcoming and, you know, inclusive environment that it was just so great to be part of. So,
what year did you first play at Clarence?
It's about 2016. Yeah. Okay. So played for a couple of years there, and then off the back of that, drafted at the end of 2018.
Which is extraordinary, and we'll obviously chat a lot about this, but you go from what you just explained, having never been tackled, having no skills whatsoever, having not picked up a footy, to being drafted a couple of years later and then playing in North Melbourne's first game in 2019. That is extraordinary. Who would you say were your key influences when you first started playing footy?
Yes, so I think Andy Smith at the time, he was the coach at Clarence, and you know, the time and energy he put into the club and the team, you know, and he's, you know, still there kind of today, rolling footies and doing the same thing, I think is pretty incredible. But I think for me at that time in my life as well, it was Dad who was out there kicking with me, because I just wanted more. I thought 2 training sessions a week, like, you know, just had gone from 8 to 9 sessions to 2 hours of training a week. I thought, no, I need some more of this. So he would often come around at Cambridge Oval there, and we would, you know, have a couple of hours kicking, and we'd work on skills and different parts of the game, and absolutely loved it and couldn't get enough of it. At the time, there was no kind of additional training that I could do outside of local footy. There was no kind of talent pathway programs at that stage. So anytime that, you know, I wanted to work on my own skills, or I felt like it definitely was, you kind of had to go away and work on it yourself. So yeah, really fortunate that Dad was always, it was always a yes. Every time I asked, you know, to go for a kick, I don't think he's ever said no. He could be sick, not feeling like it, raining. He always said yes. So I think that was a massive part. It was the grand final at the end of 2017 that it was half time in the match, and it was quite tough. I think playing Launceston at the time, and I remember saying to him, like, geez, like, you know, 3 kicks have spun the right way. Like, this is incredible. Like, and it just finally, you know, started to sink in that I felt like I could finally see that there was improvement. And I think every time I saw a little bit of improvement, that gave me a little bit more drive to continue to get better.
Was he much of a footballer himself, or just a football lover?
He didn't talk a lot about his career, but played with North Hobart. Played quite well. His dad also played. My pop also played with North Hobart. Very, very humble in terms of talking about his own career, but football lover, loves, you know, so involved in my footy now, and massive, very, very big passion for footy in general, I think.
So 2016 you first start playing, 2017 is the first year of the AFLW. When you first started playing football, did you have any concept that this was, 1, on the horizon, this competition, and then 2, maybe you could end up playing in it? Yeah,
it was an interesting kind of, I suppose, like the pathway, because I remember at the time looking at this, I think it was an All-Stars game at the time, might have been the Bulldogs against the D's at that time, and it was the first women's game on TV that I had watched, and I thought, geez, you know, this is incredible, like the skill, and it did give me a lot of determination to go, oh, that's actually something I really want to do. And I think for the first time, because in every other sport I played, there was a clear path in terms of to the elite level, and in footy at that stage it was a little bit cloudy in terms of what was happening, and then obviously the AFLW commenced, and that was just incredible to watch on TV, and I was suddenly a bit of a footy nuffy, like from going to not knowing much at all. But yeah, it was definitely challenging at times. Like I remember when I was 18, 19, started playing, I think it was about 19, and there was a state team, a Tassie team at the time, but it was an under 18 team, and I thought, geez, I wish I played earlier. I wish I started earlier so I could, you know, play in some of these rep teams, and because there was nothing after kind of you've turned 18, and it wasn't an easy kind of road to getting drafted at the end of 2018. Like there was definitely times that I look back, and I remember clearly having a conversation, you know, with someone at the time in Tassie, and they said, look, I just don't think you're quite there yet. And, hearing that for me, I thought, a bit of failure kind of came in the mix there, and the emotion of that, thinking, maybe I don't want this, and maybe it isn't for me, maybe I'm not going to be able to get there, I've started too late. So those thoughts kind of all definitely came to the forefront of my mind. And I think, as I said before, as an athlete, I think, you're so competitive, and I think the thought of failure sometimes definitely can turn you away. But at that stage, it was either I just go back and be happy playing local footy, or I really push and want to get drafted. And thank God I did, chose the latter, because, and if it wasn't for a couple of people around me at the time, it was towards the end of 2018, and someone asked me, have you applied for the draft? And I said, no, I didn't. And it closed in, I think, 2 or 3 days' time. And I'd had like small dealings with North Melbourne, but nothing, to a crazy extent that I thought I was anywhere near good enough to be on a list. But he said at the time, I think you should nominate. What have you got to lose? And I think, that then I was like, what do I have to lose? So I remember putting my name or nomination in for the draft, and it was the morning of the draft, and Mum said to me, I was working at the time in government, doing like a cadetship, and I was heading to work, and she said, are you going to watch the draft? And I said, I might have a look, I'll have a watch of it online. She goes, I reckon, why not? There's a few Tassie names, the Haynes twins at the time, Emma Humphreys. So it's really exciting for Tassie in general. Like North Melbourne had this had this relationship with Tassie, and they were coming into the comp. So it was really exciting. And I remember watching it at work, and there was a few other things going on, so I wasn't watching it completely, pick for pick. But then I got this message on my phone that said, congratulations. And I thought, shit, what's happened here? And I, timed it back 5 seconds, and I'd been picked as North Melbourne's last pick. So
you missed it?
I did. I slightly missed it, yeah. Which was pretty crazy at the time, because now you look at, videos of boys or girls watching draft day, and think it's such a big build up, it's such a big moment. And for me, it's actually quite funny when I look back and think that was my draft experience.
It's priceless. You're at work watching the draft.
Yeah, I was. So
and you get distracted and you miss your name being pulled out.
Yeah, and I only realised when someone sent that message through. So it was quite crazy to think back on that. But I think, and I got the call from Reese at the time, who was the list manager. He said, obviously, congratulations. And I said, you could have given me a bit more of a heads up than that, which he thought he did, but I definitely thought otherwise. But then I had to leave work early because I had a few media things to do. But no, it was. I think looking back on it, wouldn't have had it any other way. I think that was a really a time in my life that I look back on and be really proud of. And I think the fact that I didn't put too much pressure on it as well probably did help in the end.
Yeah. Can you tell me who the person was that told you to put your name in the draft? Because that seems like an enormous turning point. Not to say that you wouldn't have been drafted in later years as your footy progressed, but that very moment, that year, you weren't going to put your name down. Yeah,
it was the Glenorchy coach at the time. I have to go back and have a look who it was, because it was not the current coach. But yeah, the Glenorchy coach. So I had a presser at Blunston, and it was when we were playing in the grand final that we actually lost that year, 2018. And we played Glenorchy, and I remember heading there, and it would have been about that September time period. And I just remember standing there having a chat with them as well, and that's when he said, you put your name in, and I was a little bit like, oh no, I wasn't really thinking about it. But yeah, so it is pretty incredible that was probably the turning point. Looking back.
So North Melbourne had to wait to get into the competition. So the competition starts 2017. North Melbourne comes in 2019. You're drafted pick 61, 2018. What is it like being part of a fledgling football club from the very start?
Yeah, I think because I didn't really know what to expect, whatever I walked into or whatever I was going to be a part of, it was so exciting anyway, and I was so grateful at that stage. we actually had a hub down in Tassie at the time. There was 7 or 8 Tasmanians on the list with North Melbourne at the time. So we trained down in Tassie, and we'd fly across for games. And I think at the time, looking back on that, it probably did work well for me. I wasn't probably sure whether I was prepared to move away interstate to play at that time. All my friends and family and work and everything was in Tassie for me at that stage. So it worked quite well having a hub. But I think, over the years, it did mean that we were training with a lot smaller group. We didn't necessarily, have the same access to coaching staff and all the rest of it that you need in an elite, high performing environment. So COVID hit, we were unable to fly in and out. So then post that year, the hub in Tassie was going to be, no longer functioning, and all the Tassie players needed to move to Victoria for the season. So that's what I did. And that first year, I think, was pretty challenging because I was still in a bit of a stage where I didn't 100%, I knew I wanted to be an AFLW player, and but I wasn't sure whether that at the time, the 10 hours a week it was, whether that was worth, changing my career, moving my whole life for footy. So, and to think back on that as well, like I think, it was not that money was involved, but you got your 5-6 grand at the time, and it's almost like the whole moving itself, you've blown that all there.
Cover it.
Yeah, no, it didn't quite cover it. So there was a lot of like decisions to make at that time, and so I moved over for 6 months of the year, and then I'd move back to Tassie for the other 6, and at the time it worked quite well. But then over the course of the years, I probably really struggled then to be really present here in the 6 months that the season was on, because I kind of felt like I lived a bit of 2 lives, half in Tassie, half here. So it was probably 2021, 22 that I finally, thought, no, I need to, kind of pull the cord, break through and make the move. So I packed up everything and made the move completely over to Melbourne. And I think, the first 12 months is always hard when you move to a different state, settling in, making new friends, all the rest of it. But I think that was the best thing ever, because now I feel like, so entrenched in the environment over here, in the club, in Melbourne in general, and absolutely loving it. So I think that was, it was hard. It was a really challenging choice to make, and really uncomfortable one as well, I think. But it was definitely the right one.
How did you go from not putting your name in the draft almost to getting drafted to playing in North Melbourne's first game months later at North Hobart Oval, of all places, in a 6-goal win?
Yeah, it was very incredible. I remember, so after I got drafted, and I remember training and working really hard, and I remember saying to Mum at the time, like, I really want to play round 1, or I really want to play a game. That was kind of my next goal. And she said, it's a really good achievement that you've been drafted. But I knew in my mind that I was like, but I want to play round 1. So I just knew that, I was obviously starting in a lot lower base than a lot of the other girls on the team. I definitely was nowhere near, as talented as some of the my teammates at the time, but I knew that, if I worked hard, that, round 1 came round, I knew that I could say I did everything I could to try and be there, and be picked for that game. So, I did everything possible, and, so I was so happy and so grateful when Scotty Gowans called me, that week and said, you're in, and I thought, he's joking, or I wasn't too sure what to expect. But God, I was nervous for that game, and I think it didn't really help it did help that it was in Tassie, but at the same time had a flurry of kind of text messages that week saying, I'm coming to watch, and I almost felt like saying, no, please don't, but then, it's on live TV, so, but I think that made me extra nervous, but at the same time, it was such a nice memory to think back on, that all my friends and family were there, and to debut in front of them was pretty special.
Progresses for you to being valued enough to be in the North Melbourne leadership group. North Melbourne's seemingly always been relevant in the AFLW competition every year, contesting. Last year, made the grand final. You had injury early in the year, managed to get back late. What was that experience like for you, getting so close to tasting a premiership?
Yeah, definitely it hurt a lot, and it hurt a little while for a couple of weeks there, because, you know, we speak about all the things that we do in the lead up to that moment, and I think there's so many of things you can control, but there's so many uncontrollable variables that can happen as well. And I think that's the big thing, that there is so many things that have to go right for you to make a grand final. And then, so I think at that time, when I vividly remember, it was about, you know, midway through that last quarter, you know, the momentum swing and the game slowly slipping away, and you kind of think back on all the things you had to do to get there, and it is really heartbreaking. But I have reflected, you know, on that game in the last couple of months, like, realised that it was such an incredible week in the lead up. You know, I've never played in a bigger game as that, so it was pretty incredible experience to go through that final series in general. Like, we were finally able to knock off the D's, Adelaide by a point, and then, you know, we came up against Brizzy and the Granny, so it was just a pretty incredible run. And I think if I would take anything out of it, it's that experience. And yeah, although very disappointing result in the end, I think it's definitely made us hungrier this season though coming.
Yeah, as we chat, you're sort of a few weeks into pre-season training, aren't you?
Yeah, it's been good. Someone said the other day, week 6 or 7, so it's flown by. But yeah, the pre-season itself has felt quite long though, to be honest, because we do more a bit of a pre-season, I guess. It's kind of slowly shifting from that 6 months on, 6 months off to really 10 months of the year now. I mean, we finished up the Granny in early December, and then we were doing a bit more like informal training come end of Jan, early Feb. So yeah, it's not really a long break in between, which is kind of good, and how it should be with the game, how it's progressing. So yeah, we've been training really since early Feb now, so we've had a really good pre-season, which is, I think, set us all up for a really solid pre-season, and then roll into some pracky matches soon, which everyone's very excited for. You know, there's only so many conditioning sessions you can do before you think, geez, you know, am I questioning why I'm doing this, or why I chose to be an athlete? But yeah, it's really exciting time, and we've got a really healthy list at the moment. We've had some really good new recruits, went to the draft and recruited really well, and you know, obviously like Libby Birch came over from the D's as well. So we do have a really mature side, I think, and I think that's what's really helped us. But we're also, yeah, we have a side full of very different, interesting people, which is something that I love most, I think, about the club.
Awesome. You mentioned the 5,000 you got to transport your life to Melbourne from Tassie. Thankfully, the AFL and the AFL Players Association, as part of the CBA, have steadily negotiated some increments of a positive nature when it comes to pay for female athletes and AFLW players, and that will continue to expand. But you're still combining full-time work with playing footy, aren't you? Can you tell me about your role with AFL Tasmania, how that came about, what you're doing?
Yeah, so I work with AFL Tas in the talent space at the moment. I originally started working at the AFL in 2018, so very similar time to getting drafted. But worked in kind of more of a business admin phase. I was working, you know, at government, and I saw this job pop up for the AFL at the time, and I think the job description at the time was like making sure that the kitchen's tidy, mailing, postage, like all those kind of roles. And I was thinking to myself, oh, like I've got a uni degree, like, but I knew I wanted to get out. I wanted to get in sport, and I like really knew I wanted to work in sport. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna have to bite the bullet and just go for the role. And thank God I did. Met Damien Gill, who's head of AFL Tas at the time, and he actually was the one that kind of drew me into the role, and ended up kind of making the role something more than that. He said, you know, it's a very entry basic job, but you know, that's not how it has to be. There's so much room for growth, and that's the something I found really positive about the AFL, that you know, if you want to work in a different area, or there's something that you're interested in, the options are pretty endless, which is something that I've really enjoyed. So started kind of in more of a very basic admin, worked through to kind of business ops, and now in the talent lead role in operations for our Tassie Devils 18s and 16s and junior academies. So absolutely love working in the space. I think, it complements, being a player quite well. I feel like there's young girls and boys coming through the pathway, and it's pretty rewarding to see, the work that our staff put in, or the players themselves put in, to give themselves every chance to play at the elite level.
And those teams are doing really well, aren't they?
Yeah, they are doing really well. We've got games this weekend with our 18s comps, and had our 16s boys champs recently that we're really competitive at. So it's really good to see. Like, I think finally it's nice that Tassie seems to have a bit of a voice in, and obviously it helps when you're doing well. But from when I first started to now, I feel like, because we have been quite competitive, that more people are listening, more watching the games, more really invested in Tassie footy, and that was well before even the announcement, AFL team license, things like that. So it's pretty good to see that. I think finally Tassie footy is getting that recognition it really deserves, and I think these young girls and boys are really representing our state so well when they go away and play in the champs in Queensland or games in Victoria.
And this, particularly the 15-year-olds at the moment, both boys and girls, it's a really critical age bracket, isn't it? Because they're going to be the first crop that Tasmania has the chance to select for its inaugural men's and women's lists.
Yeah, it is pretty exciting. Like, finally there's academies in the talent pathway now. So I think we can say that the talent pathway is complete. We've got now from 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and we have a pathway for them. So I think that's really important when we look at other sports like basketball, soccer, athletics in the state that are running these programs and initiatives well into 12, 13, 14 boys and girls. And we were sitting there for a while saying, come to footy, we only really start when you're 15, but come along anyway. So I think it was a really important step to have those academies up and running in terms of pathway in Tasmania. And that age group, we had some inductions with them a couple of months ago, which I spoke at, which was so exciting to see, especially these young girls and boys that are just so excited that they can see a future of playing, potentially playing for their state. So which is really exciting to see. It kind of brings me back to when I was quite young and going to footy games or going to different sporting events, and you get to see your athletes that you look up to in real life. For me, that was swimming at the time. So and to have that presence going to be that presence in Tassie, I think is going to be so important.
Have you at all reflected on what it might have meant for you had that pathway existed when you were 11 or 12?
Yeah, I think looking back on it, you obviously, the saying of you can't be what you can't see, and I think that's so relevant for the girls and boys now. It's really hard for I suppose young girls and boys playing footy to see what they could become when they potentially do have to move away and move into state to pursue their AFL, AFLW careers. So that's why even as a North Melbourne Footy Club, we've got community camp down in Tassie next weekend. I know the presence of Hawthorn, North Melbourne in the men's space as well, I think is so important, that those two clubs that we're getting down there and being able to be involved with the community, because I think having done it a couple of times now, you can see the benefit and the excitement that these kids have when they meet their favourite players. And I mean, Jazzy Garner's probably their absolute favourite player, even though she's not Tasmanian. But so it is very exciting to see them. And
You mentioned community. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation at the moment about training and administration facilities in Tassie, and your side of the river too, the Eastern Shore at Rosny there. There's a vote going on at the moment as to whether the community supports that. But one thing I think that a lot of people haven't realised is just how involved the community is in these facilities. And North Melbourne's the classic example with the huddle program you run out of there, and the educational opportunities that exist for disadvantaged young people, immigrants coming through there, even older people coming in for exercise classes and that type of thing. My knowledge of the huddle is that there is just constantly something going on there that involves the community. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the huddle is, an incredible program that North Melbourne run, and I think all the players we've been able to, be lucky enough to do sessions with people that come through the huddle program, and I think it shows you that it is more than a footy club, and it is more than football to these people, and it's being able to also show young girls and boys in these programs that there is more to being an athlete, and that you can chat to them about their schooling life or personal life, or just show them that what sport can do for their mental health and well-being. And I think that's so incredibly important. It's not always just about being an elite athlete or about them even playing footy. It's just about probably showing them that there's support there, and what an environment like a footy club can bring in terms of that supportive and inclusive nature. And I think over the course of my journey, that's been something that's so evident in every time or any club I've been at, that it is just more than a footy club or a footy team. It's a really good environment that others can really want to be part of as well, which I think is quite exciting.
How did you personally feel when the announcement was made that Tassie was getting licences in the AFLW and AFL men's competitions?
Yeah, I knew it was something that was building, and I think as obviously you're a passionate Tasmanian, you are very happy in ways that you think about time that all these Tasmanians are screaming out for so long. To want a team, and I think being involved in the junior pathway in the state, seeing what that means to those young boys and girls as well, I think is just amazing and incredible kind of opportunity for them. But not only the top talent that we talk about, we've seen levels of participation numbers skyrocket since the announcement of the team, and I think that in itself is a huge number. And I know it's hard to sometimes we think about elite level high performance facilities, what that would do for the state, but I think we can already see what it's done for the state in terms of just the numbers of the sheer growth in terms of boys and girls now playing the game.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Awesome chatting to you, Nicole. Quick fast fire questions to finish.
Yep.
And I should have asked you this earlier. Who coined the nickname Flash?
Well, I don't really have any special story, but it was actually Maddie Smith. So when I first started playing footy, obviously didn't realise I was going to be training, so I had to borrow my brother's bright green boots that were about 3 sizes too big for me. So that was where the nickname Flash came from. She said, but I came to my first session and said, what's your nickname? So I don't have one. Like, I don't know. We don't use nicknames outside of footy, really. And anyway, so she goes, all right, well, you're Flash then, because you run a lot and you've got those bright green boots on. I thought, oh God.
All right,
So
now,
as
a North Melbourne player, favourite boots colour to wear?
Boots colour, love a white pair now.
Okay.
Black makes me look probably too slow.
Favourite football ground in Tassie?
Love North Hobart Oval being the first ever ground I played on at AFLW level.
All right, you get one pick of the AFLW competition, the entire competition as it is at the moment. Who are you picking for Tassie?
Player-wise, to play at Tassie?
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough, I reckon.
Let's say you're picking them now, for the now.
For the now?
Mm-hmm.
In the competition now. I think, leadership-wise as well, someone like a Kate Hoare, I reckon, really, influential player, good leadership, someone like her, I think.
All right, like it. You've got the pick of the AFLW competition. The siren has sounded. Your team trails by 5 points. Who is taking the shot?
Easily.
Kick the first goal in the AFLW.
Yeah, easily Jazz Garner.
Okay. And you need to recommend somewhere for a tourist to go in Tasmania. where must they go?
7 Mile Beach. I would
The
say
golf
7
course
Mile
is
Beach.
being built, Providence Golf Course.
Exactly. World's best beach in Australia. I would probably say I love the East Coast of Tasmania. I think is just beautiful. And that covers like about 6 or 7 spots, so that's easy to say.
Nicole Bresnehan, it's a case of unfinished business for both her and the North Melbourne Football Club this AFLW season. Could she join another Clarence product, Jess Wushner, and become an AFLW Premiership player? I hope you enjoyed hearing Nicole's story. For more episodes of The Heart of It with other Tassie successes, subscribe to the podcast or check out the Devils' official website, tasmaniafc.com. I'm Alistair Nicholson. Thank you for listening.